Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. So today we are doing a portion of the Battle of Salamanca. So it's the attack of the British 3rd Brigade. I'm being heckled by my club mates here. It's the attack of the British 3rd Brigade as the French move towards the village in the corner there. So the British have come out in ambushing force. We've got, I've actually written it down today. We've got the Wallace Brigade, General Wallace's brigade over here. So that consists of one line battalion. Let me zoom in on that. One line battalion and one Highlander battalion. General Wallace, of course, played by the Duke of Wellington today, because you know that's how we roll. And they are supported by a unit of the 60th Rifles, the Royal American Rifles. Those of you who see my favourite units video, they get a special mention in that one. So we move to the east, it would be, so the British left, and we've got the Central Brigade there of Campbell. So he's got 2 battalions of the 5th line. Now we're not necessarily using the correct units here, we're just using what we've got. So we've got 2 battalions there, and then they've got the 94th as well. Now they weren't a Highlander unit, but we're going to use a Black Watch for them today. The 3rd Division was known as the Fighting Division, also sometimes called the Fighting Irish, and they've got the Connaughts there, and the Highlanders. I think that suits. So that middle division, they will be having the Tough Fighter special rule. Then we move over to the right. Now this was perhaps the most amazingly named man in the Napoleonic Wars' brigade, a Colonel Manly Power. That's a great name, I love that guy. And it's a Portuguese brigade, so it's made up of one unit of Portuguese line, and next to him we've got the Kings, but they're going to be Portuguese today. They're just dressed like Scousers, so there you go. And then out on the British left, so the extreme east of the British line, we've got General Durbin's brigade. Now again, it's kind of using what we've got, so we've got some KGL at the back and some light dragoons at the front. There are actually 2 regiments of Portuguese dragoons, but I don't have Portuguese dragoons yet, so that's what I'm using. So now we move south and we get to the French lines. Now these guys, they look like they're in a formidable column of attack, but they're actually in column of march. We've got 2 brigades on the table here. We've got Brigade Bonte at the front, which consists of the 1st line and the 62nd line, so 5 battalions in all. And then we've got some divisional artillery, and then we've got the 2nd Brigade, which is, well, there's no given commander of this brigade. So those of you who've been with the channel since the beginning will remember my early battles fighting in the camps of Bologna. So it's the general whose career we've been kind of following on the channel, General Timothée. He's going to be in command of the 2nd Brigade, so I'm certain that's going to do super well. Not. We're also having some reserves in case the battle starts to swing too heavily one way or the other. So we're going to have the General de Brigade Curto's Light Cavalry Brigade, and we're also going to be having the Heavy Brigade of, I want to say, I can't remember who was in charge of the Heavy Brigade. It'll come to me if we need to, I'm sure. So we're playing on a 6-foot by 8-foot table. The objectives are that the French have to destroy at least one of the British brigades and occupy the village. The British have to destroy at least 2 French infantry brigades. Well, when I say destroy, at least force them to withdraw. So that's the setup. A lot of French infantry, not much cavalry, but the British are already on the table here. The British are going to be going first, so I'll be back at the end of turn 1 to see how it goes. So the end of turn 1, so the British went first because they are the attackers in this scenario. The brigade on the British right, they failed their order, but the guys in the centre, they zoomed forward and they opened fire at the French on the hill. Now, I was very lucky, I didn't actually take any casualties, but I did have 2 battalions disordered, so they're in a little bit of trouble. In my turn, oh sorry, I should also mention the British Light Dragoons over here. They charged in the flank, additionally causing 4 casualties in 1 round of combat. Fortunately, the French infantry, despite hitting on 5s with 3 dice, caused 2 back, so they were not going down without a fight. In the French first turn, The unit next to them formed square, just in case they decided to do a runner. And the rest of the units that could turned to face the British in their column of attack. So we fired some French back at the British. We disordered and did 1 wound on the Connaught Rangers. We hit the Green Howards in the middle, but that wound was saved. So not I should also say, in the second combat, the Light Dragoons, after the French infantry turned to face, I was still hitting them on 5s because I was shaken, but we did 1 wound each. I was supported, so they fell back. So that's the end of turn 1. It's still pretty balanced. British zoomed forward. It'll be interesting to see what they do this turn. Are they going to charge, or are they going to trust in their superior musketry? Let's find out as we go into British turn 2. So the end of turn 2, and the hero of Hougoumont, he does not mess about. The French turned to their right in their first turn, and they stormed down the hill. The British spent most of the turn firing at the French columns. They caused some damage. This column here, its stamina, it is shaken. But overall, I think the French got off pretty lightly. The rifles over here and the brigade on the British right stormed forward and fired, knocking 2 damage off the 1st Battalion there. So that was a little scary. The French artillery still didn't want to unlimber, so go figure. But the French musketry, pretty good on the hill. I caused 1 casualty and disordered the KGL, and I'm still in square there. And the battalion here fired down on the Highlanders, and they caused 1 casualty and disordered them. So not bad at all. The combats were a mixed bunch. On the west of the battlefield, the French left. They lost that combat, but carried on fighting. In the centre, the Green Howards fought the French column to a standstill, and they will carry on fighting next turn as well. So that's the end of turn 2. Still looking pretty balanced. I think that General Marchant, who's the guy I couldn't think of earlier on, at the head of his 2 regiments of dragoons, might be thinking of making an appearance this turn. Let's see how his command rolling goes. So that is the end of turn 2. The French counter-attack, they're not taking this lightly. They're going right into the British and giving it large. Let's see how it goes on turn 3 when the cavalry arrive. Okay, so the end of turn 3, and this was one of those crucial turns where the battle could have been won or lost. The rifles moved up onto the hill and fired into the flank of the 1st Battalion of the 1st Regiment, so that made them disordered and have excess casualties, but they passed their test, luckily. I'm not expecting much from them for the rest of the battle, though. The British also pulled back a little bit. They're still within musket range, and they poured shot into them. Good tactics, I think, there from General Dan. So the centre, the French lost their battalion that were fighting the... I keep saying that they're the Connaught Rangers, but yes, they are the Connaught Rangers. That's good. I'm glad I keep saying they're the Connaught Rangers, because they are. So the unit that was fighting them broke, and the unit that was supporting them rolled a 3 and also evaporated as well. So it's first blood to the British. But next to them, there's a gaping hole. Ooh, this is where the Green Howards were. They were defeated by this French battalion, which used its victory move to pull back. So, that's there. Now, the British cavalry didn't turn up. That's an empty corner over there, just 2 artillery guns that have been pouring shot down. But the French cavalry absolutely did. The light cavalry, so in the actual historical battle, it was mostly chasseurs, but chasseurs boring, so I've got hussars instead. They came on the centre, and they're going to reinforce this French position. Over here, I tried to charge the Highlanders, failed abysmally, but they've got a unit in support here, and I had a unit in line that fired down on the British Light Dragoons, causing a disorder. That's the most important thing, and taking them back up to 3 casualties after they were rallied in their turn. So, it was looking very bad for the French at the end of the British turn 3, but I think it's actually not looking too bad for them at the moment, especially with the arrival of the cavalry. So let's see how that goes. Now, any of you who've seen my Waterloo videos will know I was incredibly critical of our French cavalry commanders. So let's see if I can do any better than those guys did in the turn 4 of our Battle of Salamanca. Yeah, so I come to you live from turn 4. The French 1st Battalion of the 1st Line have been absolutely flensed That's a great word. Flensed by the Highlanders, the 33rd and the Riflers. They've taken 3 excess casualties and they're disordered. So let's see if they can stand this. There's -4 to this dice roll. Let's see how it goes. Well, I only rolled 5 to start off with, so -4 makes me down to 1. So they evaporate, they explode, they are gone. So the head of the French column is no more. Let's see how the French can react to this in their turn 4. So I should probably mention, I forgot to mention it, which is the whole reason I was doing that live, was that is now broken the 1st French Brigade. So the British are 1 step closer to victory. These 2 battalions here, which were looking quite formidable, they'd have been pretty good against the Connaught Rangers there, now can no longer charge. I can't advance towards the enemy with them. So it looks like they might be forming a line next turn. But let's see how it goes. I've still got plenty of action over here. So, turn 4 for the French, coming up next. So, not a particularly eventful turn. The cavalry tried to burst through and charge, but they failed their role. The French infantry went down the hill into the enemy. They were disordered by the British closing fire, but they did win the combat, shaking the Highlanders. But the Highlanders rolled very well on their test, and they stood their ground and fought. That's pretty much it, really. The French line on the hill here, they rallied, which was nice. They fired down at the light dragoons and did nothing. So that's pretty much the end of French turn 4. Nothing much to write home about. I think the British are probably going to close the jaws, and turn 5 is not going to be a good one to be a Frenchman. Let's see how it goes. Well, that was the turn of the French cavalry. The regiment of Hussars zipped round the back of their infantry, charged the Highlanders, and got absolutely pounded into the dust. The Highlanders failed to form square, and still they did 5 casualties on the Hussars. So, yeah, no, that was, not great. But over here, the Hussars, supported by the 3rd Hussars, charged in, and we destroyed another British battalion. So I believe that sorry, no, we didn't destroy them. Thank you, Dan. I forced them back 2 moves, and they are disordered. Now that's a bit of an issue, because that would have broken that brigade had I done that. But as it is, they are still unbroken and unbowed. But my cavalry, with their victory move, decided to move over to their flank. So they're menacing this disordered light dragoon unit here. I've still got my unit on the hill pouring fire down into them, but on the French left it's really not looking good for this infantry battalion. I managed to rally one of the casualties off, but the general's now with that unit. Ooh, I don't fancy their chances this turn. Luckily these Scots were shaken by the cavalry charge, so they can't charge me, but they can definitely fire those muskets at me. The French artillery, after 5 turns of trying, finally unlimbered, but because we were playing the rules of the artillery phase, they couldn't shoot that turn. So next turn, they'll be firing, hopefully, at some British cavalry and turning them into cat food. So let's see how it goes in British turn 6. And that's the end of turn 6, and I think with that we can probably call it the end of the game. Here on the British right, the infantry have swung around those Highlanders. They've been rallied back to only having 2 casualties. But I don't think there's much fight left in them. I don't know, maybe there is, I don't know. So over here, the Connaughts, they're in a broken brigade, so they won't be going anywhere. But behind them are 2 units of British dragoons. In the actual battle, of course, they were a bit further towards the centre of the French line, sorry. But I thought they were too cool to leave out for this one. The French, in the meantime, they fell back up onto the hill here. They're going to have a bit of a defensive position, but ultimately I think they're going to retreat back to the east, maybe the southeast here, away from the rest of the French army. I did try and attack over here, but that unit only got 1 move, which wasn't enough to take them into the heavily damaged King's Regiment there. And that meant that they're rather exposed on their own there. They're probably going to form a square and very slowly make their way back up the hill, and then the French will retreat. The Hussars, I've got 2 regiments. One's very badly damaged, the other one's still undamaged, but I think they'll just be skirmishing as the infantry fall back and make their way to the main army. So an absolutely great game there. Well done, Dan. A strong British victory. I think we both learned a lot. I just want to recreate something, so I'm going to do a video as a bit of an aftermath thing on this one, and it's basically what happened with the British infantry at the foot of the hill, because obviously that's been and gone and you can't really see it. but it shows what I was talking about on the greatest game video about how to coordinate infantry and cavalry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that back up again, and it's going to be a bit of a stunted up process, but I think it'll give the show what happened in the actual game. So bear with me, I shall get that set up now. I mean, it's going to be like 10 minutes to me, but it's going to be a mere second to you guys. So I will get that done and see you in a second. So this is kind of how it was set up. The infantry and the cavalry were actually on the other side of each other. But yeah, that's close enough. So the French infantry are within 12 of the British here. So they get to do an initiative move, which forces that British infantry and pins them in place there. I then ordered the cavalry to charge the British. Now, because I moved first on initiative, the infantry had to go first, and it stopped the British line from forming square. The British closing fire happened, and then the Hussars get all the bonuses for being cavalry against infantry in line, and the infantry get all the negatives for being infantry against cavalry. So that's how I inflicted 6 casualties on the kings over there. Now, I didn't break them, unfortunately. I probably should have done on the odds, but you know, these things happen. So that's one way of doing it. The other way of doing it would have been if the cavalry were in initiative range, or maybe both of them were, is charging with the cavalry first, forcing the infantry into square, and then charging the infantry in as well. Now that would have meant that the British infantry were only attacking me with 2 dice. I was attacking back with 6. It would have been a very poor day to be a British infantryman. Those Hussars then would have been free to either attack the British Hussars, maybe attack those Portuguese if they ever came out of that church, or just harass and help as support to the British infantry. So that's 2 ways of using cavalry and infantry together. Now if I'd only had one unit or the other, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So it's really important to go with that combined arms approach. If I'd had horse artillery, I could have also shot them up as well. I think you're better off engaging them in combat than you are shooting. I think 99.9% of the time in black powder, you're better off charging than shooting. But, you know, there is that 0.1 or 0.1% chance of the time where it's not the best move. So, I just wanted to show that. It came up in the game, and I didn't get video of it at the time. I just wanted to put it back and kind of put my money where my mouth is, give a bit of tactical advice after the Waterloo debacle of the cavalry refusing to charge infantry. So there you go. That's a little bit of tactics for you there. And as I say, thank you very much for watching this far into the video. This has been a very small part of the Battle of Salamanca. It's a battle that I'd like to do a lot more of in the future. Maybe partisan next year. I might think if we can do it there. But let's see. But thank you very much for watching, and I shall see you guys next time. Goodbye.